Welcome to Altar of the Demo Gods. If you're wondering what advice from two experienced sales engineers sounds like, it's a little like this.
Welcome back to Altar of the Demo God Sales Engineering Podcast. I'm Keith Wilson, your host, along with my co-host, John Morton. John, how you doing this week?
Buenas noches, Keith.
Come on, Baxter. You know I don't speak Spanish.
Trying to reach our international audience. Let's build that up.
What movie is that from?
Come on, Baxter. You know I don't speak Spanish? I don't know off the top of my head, but it's familiar.
Anchorman.
Oh, my goodness.
When was the last time you watched that movie?
I watched Step Brothers 2 days ago, but Anchorman I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. Anchorman is a classic. You really should. So the last time I watched Anchorman was my girlfriend and I went to San Diego for vacation to visit her brother. And, you know, Anchorman takes place in San Diego. On the flight back, we watched Anchorman.
Together?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, considering Will Ferrell is a USC alumnus, I hope he doesn't listen to our podcast. But if he does, he should give us a shout out or be a guest.
Yeah, I have a feeling Will Ferrell has no interest in you, me, or our podcast.
You never know, man. I saw him at a frat party in some memes the other day. It's possible. We might get him and Baxter both on the show. You never know.
You never know. You never know. So in last week's episode of the podcast, we talked about negotiation, talked about building trust and rapport ahead of time. As much as you can build ahead of time, the better. Document. Negotiation can be a win-win for both parties. It doesn't have to be adversarial, but generally for everybody to win, everybody also has to lose a little bit too. And it really, negotiation is really, you got to get to the heart of the matter. And you do that by asking why and just being honest. John, what were your takeaways from last week's episode?
Yeah, exactly. Negotiations involve some concessions from both sides, right? If you've ever been a single person at a bar trying to, lights come on, last call, there's got to be some concessions made. And it can be win-win for everyone, right? And
that's a great analogy. We should have used that. It's a great way to explain leverage, right? As the night goes on, you lose leverage.
Right?
Or do you gain it?
Know what we want.
You gain it, but at a certain point you lose it. There's a chart there
That's
somewhere.
the beauty of negotiation. So yeah, next go round with negotiations, we'll bring it up. But yeah, and the other piece, ethics and integrity, right? So if it's a last call at the bar and you're married, maybe you should go home. But story, go listen to the last podcast and take it in.
Yeah. All right. So in tonight's episode, the 19th episode, I believe. Yes, episode 19. We're going to be talking about team synergy, collaborating with your sales counterpart, your AE, different technical and product teams as well. Because it really, I always thought it was my ego that thought this way, but even now that I don't work necessarily in sales anymore, I still kind of think the same way. And that's the rest of the departments are there to support the sales department, right? To support sales. If it's a sales led growth type company where, sales is reliable for the income, the company is there to support the sales team. So you have all of these other departments that are really there just to, and even product, right? Because you're like, well, no, sales is there for product, which, yeah, okay, I'm sure that's a little bit true. But also, there's plenty of times where the sales team, I see that driving a roadmap and product more than anything, right? What is it that people are buying that they're telling the sales team that they need to buy? And you kind of lump marketing in with that as well. But when you're part of a technical sales team, I always hear the AE talking about being the quarterback of the deal, right? If you have a good AE, they're on top of it. They're coordinating everything. But you as an SE are also going to have to coordinate as well, right?
Right.
John, who are some of the people, the job roles, the other teams that you interface with daily, weekly, monthly?
Yeah, so if you've ever heard my pitch as the field CTO in describing what I do, I always say explicitly, I bridge the gap between product, sales, and engineering, right? Really as an advocate for my customers. So each of those can be dissected to some degree, where when I say product, I mean, marketing, go to market, product marketers, really folks who are there kind of in the go to market side, sales, AEs to Keith's point, SEs. And then I also say engineering. Engineering can include customer success as well as engineers that are responsible for developing certain features and functions. And then you have your customers as well. That was a whole mouthful, Keith, but internally, product, sales and engineering can be dissected that way.
Okay. So it's, I think it's becoming pretty apparent that it's important to be cross-functional. You have these teams that you can work with cross-functionally and collaborate with. Let's give some examples, some use cases of, specifics. The RFIs, RFXs, RFPs, those are a great example, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to need legal to help me answer some of those questions. I need to coordinate with them. I'm going to need, there's probably I probably won't handle this. Most likely the AE will, but the AE and their VP of sales and possibly even the CFO or the COO, the CEO are going to be figuring out pricing for the deal, right? So there's coordination there. You're going to be getting some technical specs from developers, right? You're going to be talking to your product marketing team to get the architecture pieces for it and all that stuff. Can you think of another example or use case?
Yeah, actually, interesting one. I didn't think about until you just pointed it out is actually our CISO. So internally as a vendor, you may want to get your CISO involved because they're answering questions about how you protect your environment, especially like a SaaS solution. They want to know how are you protecting your environment. So CISO,
yeah, if there's a security questionnaire that's as part of that, right?
Yep.
Then there's also the customer satisfaction side of it as well. Mm-hmm. That's another reason why it's important, right? Yeah. I want my customer to have a seamless experience. I want them to speak their wishes to me and the account manager, and we make those happen if we can, right? I don't want them to have to figure out my internal structure. That's for me to figure out. But in order for them to see that, for them to get the illusion of it's just me and the AE, I have to know how to field those questions and work with different teams and even negotiate a little bit with product too, right? I may need to go negotiate with product on their timeline and roadmap for things in order to put that as part of a deal.
Yeah, to add to that, Keith, I think it's important, especially when you're selling like an enterprise product. If you're selling like a 7-figure plus product, you got to bring everyone in early. If you're selling a commodity product like, $10 per purchase, maybe not as critical, but as the deal size goes up, I genuinely believe you got to bring these folks in as early as you can so they're aware of what you're trying to do to support the customer throughout the process. So food for thought there.
Why is that important?
Yeah, so that exact point is, you don't want to get to the last mile and maybe you're doing all the sales process of Medic and you've met the EB and you've done all these things in the POC. And the one stickler is, your customer's demanding this feature enhancement. Well, number one, engineering may not be aware of that. They may have their own roadmap. They may need to decide, we got to reorganize everything. If they don't know ahead of time, you're wrong. Number two, customer success as well. They're saying, we don't know how to functionally support this feature. We haven't had training around what the customer wants, right? So the earlier you can bring folks in to help kind of align, organize, and prioritize what you're trying to do, I've seen a lot more success than last minute throwing a deal over the fence and saying, hey, internal teams, go figure this out. That's how sales, to your point, makes enemies. When sales makes enemies and people don't look at them as the tip of the spear of driving revenue, but causing me a headache, that creates that discomfort.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's internal to the sales, to the organization, and
right.
And their pain, and the customer ends up feeling that, but usually later on when promises don't get fulfilled, right? That's 100%. That's what ends up happening, and then the customer feels that. Another use case that kind of jumped into my head of why this is important and how it's done is building a good demo, right? If I'm
Yeah.
starting my demo from scratch, I'm not building it in a silo. That would be dumb. I'm getting information from marketing because they should know what the messaging is and they should know what my customer personas are and use cases are and why these things are important to them. Product marketing specifically, if I've got a product manager that can tell me, here's your persona, here's what's important to them, here's this persona, here's what's important to them, and I can start to match that up, I can start to build my demo. And for me personally, I like to make my demos modular to where I can change them out, right, based on
Yeah.
use case and user persona.
So what's a really cool point about that, Keith? I didn't mean to interrupt, but
go ahead.
What's awesome? Yeah, is like even in my role, field CTO, I still do some demos and show things. What's super cool internally from a technical sales perspective is when you do reach out to maybe somebody who hasn't achieved that yet. Maybe they're like a level 1 customer success person who has the time and expertise in something very unique, like Terraform, for example. And you ask them, hey, can you help me build this into my demo? It builds rapport internally and it gives them an opportunity to, grow professionally and personally. It's kind of a unique one-off where I don't know it all. Man, I'm getting old now, Keith. I don't know half this stuff that's happening now, but you introduce these folks from different areas of your org. It makes them feel good about what they're doing and it helps, drive revenue and you can acknowledge them. It's just a cool function.
Well, you're bridge building when you do that, right?
Yeah.
And you're building into this culture of collaboration.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. You're bringing people in and letting them walk away with a positive experience, right? You do that enough times and that's going to be a cultural thing and hopefully the company you work at is really good at collaboration. Not all are, but if you're trying to foster or build that culture of collaboration, what you just explained, John, is a great way to do it. Hey, expert on this thing, come talk to me so I can build a demo around this that's going to make it better. Because, man, technical people love being the expert on the thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if somebody's telling them, like, you are the expert, I don't know this, but I need to explain this to customers. Like generally, not always, but generally that expert doesn't want to explain it to customers, but they will explain it to another technical person, right? As an SE, you're often translating the super technical specific to your product into a little less technical, more general.
Yeah. So to put a little bit more of a touch on it and make it more, I'm proud of this, Keith. It's kind of weird to me, but Keith's known me like through like evolution of like basic sales engineer in a territory to now field CTO. I'm shocked a lot when people are hesitant to kind of approach me. They're like, oh, based on my title, I don't want to reach out to you on Slack or Teams or call you because I don't want to waste your time. Little do they know that I'm the guy at the bar who's buying everyone drinks and, chatting up everybody there ever was under the sun. But they're almost afraid to talk to internally collaborating certain folks of a certain title based on bureaucracy, breaking down these barriers by reaching out and saying, hey, can you help me out, level 1 analyst or, level 1 engineer? They feel like comfortable with you, man. And I'm not the kind of guy who like, I don't stand and bang my chest on a title, but a lot of folks acknowledge that and respect that and their fear. So being able to collaborate, to Keith's point, it makes a better culture, better organizational feel when they can feel like I can reach out to the CEO. I can reach out to the CTO. I can reach out to anybody and talk to them. It's kind of a cool thing.
That's an interesting point you brought up because I think that is kind of a barrier for a lot of people for collaborating effectively it's a respect, but it's almost taken to a certain point of fear, right? And I have it for my boss even, right? Where I'm just like, oh, that dude's so busy, I don't want to waste his time.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But at the same time, that could be to the detriment of getting something done. He's probably sitting on the other side going, man, I wish Keith would reach out to me more and like we get these things done faster.
I'm telling you right now, man, I love when people bring me ideas. When people are like, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your day to tell you about something I'm thinking about? Because honestly, it may be a problem I'm also trying to solve, right? And I want that collaborative effort in working together. It doesn't matter if it's sales, product, engineering, marketing. Reach out, man. I want to hear, right? You might help me.
Well, one of the problems that I ran into, within a short time frame after getting a director title was realizing that exactly what you said. People have respect for that title. And so not only are they hesitant to bring things up that they may otherwise, if if you were at the same level or didn't have that title, but they're I forget where I was going with that. Had a brain fart. I was going somewhere with it, and I completely lost.
It's like
myself.
You were confronted with talking to your boss, Keith. And
Speaking
you,
of it,
kind of blacked out there.
Speaking of speaking of blockers, yeah, no, there you could be afraid to bring things up, or you could, you get afraid to shake things up or to truly brainstorm or things like that. So I'm wondering, what are some of the things that you did to try and help remove that barrier, right? Because as a leader in this position, as the person with the title, fair or unfair, I personally believe the onus is on you to knock down that barrier.
Yeah. No, you're the onus is on us. So I was just taking a second to think that through. Is one of the things I've kind of noticed about those barriers just revolves around the ability to collaborate. So, most people don't have the advantage of knowing me personally. Sometimes the things I say either sound pretentious or disgenuine by the fact that I'm saying, I honestly want to hear from you. I want to talk to people, and I believe I need to be surrounded by people that are smarter than me. That's a daunting task. So what I try to do is I try to say, okay, if you have to approach a unique situation, this is what I've always done. I always like to say, well, what's the ask? If you have a cool idea, then the ask is, can I give you 15 minutes to pitch about this, right? If I have a solution that I think works, that's the ask. I want to demonstrate to you why this works, right? So kind of like framing things into like an ask. I know it sounds aggressive and weird, but once you've kind of figured that out, kind of like having an agenda in a meeting. The agenda is, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to tell you what problem that there is, and I'm going to tell you how I solve it. Just having that sort of a standard agenda is kind of what I'm saying for an ask. That's what I've noticed works very well. That sounds daunting now that I'm listening to myself say it out loud, Keith. But when I've approached someone who maybe, to your point, I was afraid of based on title or whatever, I try to say, here's exactly how I'm going to use that 5 minutes I'm asking for, and kind of expressing in that time what I'm going for in a collaborative way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're talking about it from the point of view as the person that's afraid to waste their boss's time, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So to tag onto that, another little tip, because I do this with my boss too, as far as emails go. And this is, if you've ever had to deal with a lawyer, your lawyer is going to tell you to do this too. Write one email a day, right? Get everything you need in that email, right? Don't ask a question, hit send, because 5 minutes later, you're going to have 3 more questions you want to ask. So wait until the end of the day, closer to the end of the day, where you've put in everything into an email and then send that off. The reason lawyers will tell you to do that is because they bill you by the hour, and they'll bill the minimum is like the 10th of the hour, right? So I knew, like, when I emailed my lawyer, at the very least, just for opening that email for a 10th of an hour, at the very least, I'm paying $25. So get all my questions in, right? Because every time she has to open an email, it's costing me minimum $25. So same thing could be said for above. I will say, if you're a leader that is trying to encourage and build this collaborative culture, one, you have to build trust and rapport, just like you do with your customers, right? You can't be constantly shooting down people's ideas. You have to listen to what they're saying and work with them. The idea may be bad when it's initially pitched, but you can ask questions and coach to mold that idea into something useful and still let that person take ownership of that. Because what you brought up too is building that person up, giving them ownership, giving them responsibility, I think also helps facilitate having that sort of collaborative culture. Because if somebody feels confident, they're more willing to speak up. They're more willing to ask questions. They're more willing to challenge things, quite frankly, right? If somebody has a lot of confidence in what they're doing, you can become really collaborative because you'll have people that'll challenge ideas, which is what you really need, right? You can't just
Yeah.
have a bunch of people saying yes all the time.
I think, yeah, to that, that's a good point to add. I'd like to add just one tidbit to that is, the basics of leadership and management. So many times I've seen this fail and it's embarrassing. And I'll dissect it a little. Praise in public, punish in private. I praise publicly people who bring ideas in a uniform way that are, they make sense. Make an example of someone in a good way. Don't do that to the negative, right? Never punish someone publicly because then you create fear and dissension, but pull them aside and be explicit and say, hey, I liked your ideas. I like where you're going with this. Can you put it in this format? Can you articulate it a little better? So again, very, very basic, but I've seen it. CEOs fail at this. Praise in public, punish in private. And in that way, you promote collaboration. Like if you see someone do like Key's point, oh, they brought up a good idea and they dropped it in a Slack channel and they had like this, and this. Man, take that thing and just bang it on a drum. Friday meeting, all hands meeting. What a great example. If they did a bad job, pull them aside, fix that and say, here's how you can do it better. So that's some things I would recommend.
I'll add on to that too. Make sure you praise in private as well, right? The person directly, like make sure you tell them good job. It means so much to somebody to have someone that they respect or that they work for just say like, hey, good job, man. You did a really good job on that. But also praise privately to your superiors about the people, or not superiors. I hate that term. To your leadership, the people above you in the food chain at work, right? Make sure that you're talking up the people on your team.
Yeah.
We're getting into a whole leadership conversation here, but that does a couple things. One, it builds them up, makes them more confident, fostering more communication and collaboration, but it makes you look like a great leader for hiring such great people, right? For hiring or molding or working with or managing such great people.
I think one of the things we kind of tapped on here, Keith, just to highlight it real quick is, even though when we're talking about collaboration between like product, market, sales, and engineering, that's more of a technical function. There's an underlying theme of like culture. When you have a collaborative culture and people feel like they can work together, so much more is done versus the opposite, right?
And it can be done fast.
Yeah.
It can be done fast. With a good collaborative team, it's amazing what can be done. It really is. Mm-hmm. It really is. You can see how quick and nimble and agile those teams truly are. A big part of that too is companies that have a collaborative culture have at least their leadership and other, the leadership does this and then they lead by example. So a lot of the individual contributors will do this as well, but it's having good communication strategies, communicating through multiple channels. It's 2024, baby. There's so many different ways to talk to people now, right?
Yeah.
I can text you, I can FaceTime you, I can call you, although most people don't answer the phone anymore. I can send you a message on WhatsApp. I can DM you on any social media service. There's so many different ways to communicate. I can have a podcast. I can send emails. I can send a Slack. You have to craft your message to send on multiple channels, because the reality is you're going to have people that don't use all the channels. You're going to have younger, and maybe I'm stereotyping, but you're going to have younger people that won't pick up the phone. You're going to have older people who refuse to get on Slack. So you're going to have to be on multiple mediums, and the message has to change slightly for each medium, but it's still important, right? And you need to be to make sure that the communication reaches everybody to truly have collaboration.
Yeah. Last bit on that. I know we beat it to death here, but I used to work on a submarine. Let us not forget 5 years, meaning collaboration was the key cross-functionally. Because guess what? At sea, where you're not supposed to be doing some advanced stuff, nobody's coming to save you. And if you can't figure it out, it's going to be an interesting time. So collaboration is key, even cross-functionally. And there's plenty of opportunity for it. So,
yeah. All right, John, it's that time of the show now where we're going to do our quick summary, and then we're going to say goodbye, at least for another week. Now it's time to say goodbye.
Sing it, Keith.
Yeah. So this week, We had a really good conversation, I think, on collaboration and communication and the importance of it. The reality is you need a team. You cannot work by yourself. You will die. You cannot do your job by yourself. You have to work as a team. You have to clearly communicate. You have to build rapport. You have to build trust. And everybody plays a role in the deal. John, what did you take away from this week's episode?
Yeah. Always collaboration is key to everything, right? Cross-functionally. Praise in public, punish in private, but as Keith added, also praise in public, right? These things resonate, be open and honest, listen, and it's okay to get and give constructive feedback because that's part of communication. That's the key to collaboration. So those are my takeaways there, Keith.
All right. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, do all that stuff. If this is the first time you're hearing us, maybe you came across us on YouTube, or I don't know, maybe Spotify recommended us or whatever. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Get us wherever you like, wherever you get your podcasts, or watch us again on YouTube. Links to all of this can be found on our website. If you go to demogodspod.com, that's demogodspod.com. I'll give you links at the top to everywhere you can find us, but you can also find blog posts, old episodes, and everything Alter the Demo Gods. If you have any questions for us or you'd like to be on the show, you can email us at demogodspod@gmail.com. That's demogodspod@gmail.com. We'll catch you next week when we are talking about... What are we talking about next week? We're talking about building and maintaining channel partner relationships. It's going to be a good episode. So we'll see you next week when we talk about channel partner relationships right here on Alter of the Demo Gods.